Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to be talking about Household Chartalog, a 100 charts, kitchen tips, equivalents, cleaning hints, human, pet, and car first aid, home repair, garden care, and much, much more. This is a book of possible suggestions for problems that you may encounter. Printed in 1989, this book existed in the time before the internet, when we didn't have wikis available at my fingertips, where there wasn't Google everywhere, it was not ubiquitous, where we just couldn't look something up at random without a thought, where you actually had to do research if you wanted to find something out, where if you wanted to know what is the distribution of the great golden digger wasp, for example, which is something related to another video I'll be doing in the near future, you have to actually either have the reference in your own home, which I do, or go to a library. Those were your options. So this was a book that aimed at that. So the kinds of things that this was aimed at, and I'm going to give you a brief overview. For example, the broad category of in the kitchen, they're talking about freezer storage guide. How long can you freeze an object for before the food goes bad? Emergency food substitutions. If you are missing X, what can I replace it with Y? And how do I tinker a Y to make it replace for X? Meat roasting guide. Obviously, not big with vegans. Different kinds of seafood, meat cuts, seafood cooking guide, seasonal guide to fruits, and seasonal guide to vegetables, and equivalent amounts. Then we have a section on entertaining, setting the table, which is something I've never had to look up, but here it is. Guide to liqueurs, mixed drink guide, wine guide, cheese and wine fruit guide. Things that I don't ever need. Health and nutrition. Vitamin requirements, high fiber foods, which is even an issue, something people were talking about back in '89. I try to have taken a lot of high fiber foods. I also have to watch my glycemic index, so that's sometimes it's a sliding scale on that one. Guide to high sodium content foods. You don't need that much salt, take my word for it. A guide to generic drugs, which was a pretty new concept back in '89. The human skeleton. A guideline for a weekly weight loss chart, which is not too bad. I mean, it seems relatively reasonable. The breast self-examination chart, which is, I think, quite handy. Childhood illnesses, an infant development chart, so like when they're supposed to be hitting biological milestones and developmental milestones in your chart. Then we have first aid and safety, some basic first aid for poisoning, first aid for pets, natural disaster safety, babysitters checklist, useful if you have kids. I don't have kids. Home and car maintenance, energy saving and money saving tips, formulas for furniture fillers, which was one of the odder little charts. I never really thought about that before, but I guess if you want to get a furniture filler to match your furniture, there you need a chart of some variety now, don't you? Well, here it is. Household care, household pests, needle and thread chart, which was something I also never thought about. But if you're going to be doing some repair, knowing which needles go with which type of threads and what you should be using those threads for is important, particularly if you are not knowledgeable about this from personal history. For example, I've never been exposed to this. My wife has. Some gender stereotypes alive and well in the world. Stitch charts, darning chart, laundry guide. I'm a simple guy. I throw the stuff in the wash and I wash it under cold and warm. I'm pretty simple when it comes to things like that. I'm usually doing most of the laundry. Home stain removal. That's useful. Keeping your car in tune, which probably isn't as relevant now as it was in '89. A lot of the things that were being played with back then are now expert only. Car maintenance checklist. Then we have in the garden, perennial planting guide, annual planting guides, bulb planting guides, shrub planting guide, fertilizer guides, garden pests. That's going to be dependent a lot on where you live, probably. But there are some general ones, so say, for example, that would be pertinent to all of North America. Travel, distances between cities. That was kind of cool. That was kind of cool to know that. And again, this is long before we had Google Maps. Temperature around the world, that isn't going to be as relevant today as it was in '89. Because we're screwing the planet. Packing checklist, that is relevant. Pardon me. Foreign menu terms, photography guide, less relevant than it was in '89 because this is '89 is an age before digital cameras. Camping and hiking safety, those are still going to be good. Different time zones, and European clothing sizes, because European clothing sizes are vastly different than American clothing sizes. And let's be honest, American clothing sizes are really inconsistent. I picked up a t-shirt recently and I bought an extra large. I can't remember why I ordered an extra large, and it's probably a little bit too big, but I'm not going to return it. Because Americans, like a large for one company is much different than a large for another. And a large, American large is an extra large in Europe, so yeah, they vary all over the place. I like a lot of it's vanity sizing, frankly. Then we have a family almanac, birthstones, wedding anniversary gift guide. I always use the traditional gifts for the gift guide. This coming up October will be 11th, and that will be steel. Which is going to be tough for me because, I've given my wife knives already. Language of flowers, phrenology guide, and palmistry guide. Those are for entertainment purposes only. Again, reading tarot cards, guide to reflexology, signs of the zodiac, which are also just for entertainment purposes. Temperature conversion charts, decimal equivalents of common fractions, handy to do if you don't have a calculator and you don't know how to do those kind of fractions. Metric conversions. Oh yeah, if you want to convert a fraction to decimal, take the top number, divide it by the bottom number. How to read a barometer, how to use the library, choosing a dog, choosing a cat, U.S. presidents and vice presidents up through Bush Sr. Made me smile. The 50 states, countries, and their capitals. So this is, I think, a really cool little book. I think I paid $2 for this at a thrift shop. I'm not positive. It was from Collier Books, Macmillan Publishing Company, and it's referenced under popular reference, so if you want to look that up. And originally it was $7.95. So from an era before the internet, well, not before the internet did exist, but it wasn't ubiquitously accessible to all of us. This was definitely something I find useful. Now, I picked up one a lot long ago. It dealt with a book on hierarchies. I got to find where I put it up in my reference library because, frankly, I'm not going to use that book all that often. This, however, is useful. Why? Why is this book useful even though you have the internet, you say, Tetsubo? Because I can browse it. Because contrary to what the thing you are watching me in is called, a browser, it sucks at browsing. That's one of the reasons I read so many blogs that post random links. Because browsers suck at browsing. You can't just pick up the internet and go, I can do that with a book. And you can find things in that way that you didn't know that you needed to know at that moment. And you can come up with ideas that you didn't know were kicking around inside your skull, because now you're going to be putting 2 or 3 disparate pieces of information together because you just got a new piece of information, and you got that new piece of information because you were browsing in a book. So I love the internet. I'm here every day. I live here. Okay? But the reality is, it sucks at browsing. And having a physical book in your hand is awesome for browsing. So if you ever have a chance to pick a copy of this and you find it cheap, I'd suggest it. It's a bit of an interesting historical document for an era before the internet became something that all of us loved and hated, but had a really hard time living without.